The Andes Mountains, known for their towering peaks and isolated beauty, are the home to many myths and legends. But in the early 2000s, a different kind of legend emerged. One that would chill the hearts of anyone who heard it. This is Strawberry Ink, and today we're diving into the horrifying case of Dorangel Vargas, the man who became infamous as the killer of the Andes, or the People Eater. A man who not only killed but consumed his victims, leaving behind a trail of terror and unspeakable acts. Before I start, I'd like to address two fiends. My condolences go out to all the zoos who have lost their animals due to the bird flu going around, as well as the friends and families that have lost their people to the flu. As well, best of luck to those affected by the mass deportation going on and survivors of the California fires. I would like to say to the whites in the area present others being nasty, shame on you. I also want to extend my deep sympathy to Luigi Mangione, who is detained in Brooklyn, New York, awaiting trial for 3 different cases. In case you don't follow the news as closely, Luigi is the alleged suspect in the killing of United Healthcare CEO, a man who did people around the country dirty. Luigi might get the death penalty or spend the rest of his life in prison. I wish him well, free Luigi. Sorry if that was much, but it had to be said. Now, let's get back into the episode. Dorangel Vargas was born in Venezuela, a country already ravaged by poverty and political unrest. But for him, these struggles didn't create an excuse. They became a breeding ground for something darker. By the time Vargas was in his 30s, he had already been labeled as a man living on the edge of society. He would prey on the most vulnerable, homeless people, those discarded by the world. The Andes Mountains, with their remote and treacherous terrain, became his hunting ground. He wasn't just a killer. Dorangel became known for the unthinkable cannibalism. Vargas's method was disruptingly methodical. He lured his victims into the mountains under the guise of offering help. Once alone, he would brutally attack them, murdering them, an eerie calmness in him. But his crimes didn't end there. What made it so grotesque was that after the killings, he didn't just leave his victims to rot. No, he consumed them. Pieces of their flesh would vanish as he satisfied his insatiable appetite for death and destruction. He wasn't just driven by a hunger for blood, he was driven by something far darker, a psychological need that went beyond the physical. Vargas first ended up in the streets after his family kicked him out of the house due to his erratic behavior and mental health issues. That is a decision any decent family would regret, as Vargas would become the country's mainly remembered serial killer. His parents were farmers but barely sold anything and were poor. His crazy behavior started when he would steal cattle and chickens from people's farms. For these minor offenses, Vargas would be detained in police stations for a short amount of time and then get released. This occurred 2 times. Then he was arrested a 3rd time, this time for something more severe, murder. The chilling nature of Vargas's crimes didn't go unnoticed for long. After a few murders, locals began to whisper about the strange man who roamed the mountains and streets, a man who seemed to know no limits. Authorities tied him to his first murder and were really concerned about his mental health, so they admitted him into the psychiatric institution in a small town, Peribeca. He had cooked and eaten this person's body. The person had disappeared in Venezuela's state of Merida. This deceased victim was identified at the state of Merida's coroner's office as Baltasar Cruz Moreno, and his death was confirmed a murder. His funeral services were afterwards held at the La Eternidad Funeral Home and Cathedral of Merida. There was not enough evidence to try him in the country's criminal justice system for this, nor detain him for a very long time. Vargas was eventually released from the institution because he showed stable behavior and seemed to be just like any other citizen living in poverty. However, once he was released, he continued killing and eating people. Vargas settled in a city called San Cristobal, which was part of the state of Táchira. It wasn't long before the authorities tied him to more murders. Dorangel Vargas was arrested again, and the truth of his horrific acts came to light. Vargas had been killing people and cooking their bodies under a bridge where he lived. He would make soups and serve them to others. People in the area where he settled had been disappearing from November 1998 to January 1999. Then in February 1999 was when he had been arrested for the last time. As police dug deeper into his background, they uncovered a horrifying series of murders that spanned for years. He had killed and eaten at least 10 victims, though the exact number remains unknown. When questioned at the San Cristobal police station, Vargas showed little remorse, almost as if he saw his actions as justified. He admitted to the killings and cannibalism, stating that he had done it out of necessity, believing that eating human flesh could bring him strength. He also claimed that he ate mostly males because they had a higher cholesterol and tasted better to him. However, he was only tied to 5 murders with this next arrest, despite him having been suspected of killing many more. The court appearance of Dorangel Vargas, where he appeared before Magistrate Jose Antonio Saez, had its chilling vibe, as chilling as the crimes themselves. He stood there as he didn't care about being involved in a high-profile crime case. He was denied bail. Several human remains were discovered near the bridge where he lived. Days later, more remains were found, this time of 6 more people. Therefore, he returned to the magistrate and was accused of killing a total of 11 people in this case. The coroner's office of Caracas, Venezuela, identified the remains of those missing people. The remains were then returned to their families once the DNA was archived. The Caracas Funeral Home, Funeraria Los Caobos, and Cathedral Catedral de Caracas conducted services for the victims. After a deeper investigation, the deaths of these missing people were confirmed as murders. The media covered it extensively, but no amount of coverage could make sense of the brutal acts he had committed. His defense tried to argue that his psychological state played a role, that his actions were a result of his traumatic upbringing. But the evidence spoke for itself. Vargas had planned his murders with cold calculation. Prosecutor Luis Aranda worked hard to ensure that Vargas would not be released anytime soon. The case was delayed for several years, and to this day, Vargas has not gone to trial nor been sentenced for any of his crimes. However, he has secured a not guilty plea for his 13 murder charges, and was initially assigned to public defense attorney Carlos Rivas. The case was assigned to Judge Isabel Suarez Bermúdez, but to this day, it is dead, and the country's dictator, Nicolás Maduro, has abolished the legal system. Therefore, the case search is not working. Since the year he was arrested, Vargas had been held at the jail in the city of Santa Ana del Táchira. This jail houses violent criminals awaiting trial. However, in 2016, there was a riot in the jail. Vargas took advantage of this and killed 2 other inmates who had been booked in there for robberies. He then dismembered, cooked their bodies before serving the remains to the rest of the inmates. Vargas was then transferred to a prison in another state. This prison is known as El Dorado. That's where he remains to this day. He's being held in isolation. Vargas had preyed on the vulnerable, picked them out of the shadows, and brought them to their deaths with disturbing precision. Yet some questions still linger, whether justice was truly served, and whether Vargas's cannibalism was a reflection of a deeper, darker psyche, or whether he was just a predator using his twisted fantasies to justify his crimes. Dorangel Vargas, the people eater, the killer of the Andes, remains an enigma. His gruesome crimes have made him a monster in the eyes of many, but the question lingers, what drives a man to not only kill, but to devour his victims? In the end, Dorangel Vargas' story is not just one of murder, but of human depravity, of a mind twisted beyond comprehension. His action left scars in the country of Venezuela, on his victims and on all who heard his name. May the country of Venezuela be freed from their dictatorship. May they find peace among themselves, seeking an easier lifestyle. This has been Strawberry Ink. Thank you for listening. May all the victims rest in peace. Please share the episode to your loved ones. Until next time, have a good rest of your day.